Terry Liggins, Hurdle Life Coach, here for another recap and discussion of the For Life episode series. I believe we're in week 4. Last week caught me by surprise as well, where we didn't get a chance to watch the series because of Super Tuesday. A lot going on the national stage with politics and presidential races and primaries and all that sort. And so didn't really know that Super Tuesday would supersede the episode, but it did. So didn't get a chance to watch an episode last week. So we got a break. And so I'm actually really eager to dive in today. Really excited to continue on this journey with this education program with Hurdle Life. And I really appreciate just the team that I have with me here that brings forth great ideas, challenges me, stretches me to become and actualize who it is that I've been shaped to be as an educator, as a reformer, as a personal inspiration to many who have experienced what it's like to be in the exact position that Aaron Wallace is in. This episode was so personal for me. It really touched and tapped into my own personal story. Some of you who are very familiar with my story, and maybe some of you have no idea, but I have my own journey with juvenile detention and adult incarceration dating back to my childhood, and then as recent as about 4 years ago, actually, I was released from federal prison in the year 2016. And there were some things about this episode that really reminded me and just took me back to a place of familiarity. So I really feel that as I reflect and recap on this on this episode, that I'll find myself citing some of my own personal experiences with this matter. I really appreciate those who are joining me now, who are paying attention and care about transformative reform in criminal justice. I'm so committed to continuing to be a voice for what we can do differently and how we can approach and consider new ways at going about how we deal with crime, how we deal with addiction, how we deal with trauma. And I'm just thrilled to be a part of the movement of other allies like me, locally, regionally, nationally, that care about our criminal justice system and how it's made up and the way it works and the way it doesn't work. Let's get into some of my initial reactions. And I too would say this is a difficult process. This is challenging. We'll watch the episode and jump right on, and it's not much time to gather my thoughts. So bear with me as I walk through this, and also bear with me with the short delay on beginning. I know that it's posted as starting right at 10 o'clock, but I'm coming to realize I don't think that's possible at all. So about 10:05 each Tuesday, we'll jump right in. One of the first things that jumped out to me today in this episode was the no touching during visits. When we start thinking about and looking at the criminal justice system, and we're really being critical to the way it's designed and the different practices and protocols that are in place, one of those things that are in place within our system is the no touch during visits. And there's different types of visits and different privileges, but what is that? What is this practice that in order to engage with your loved one, in order to visit your family, in order to visit your friend, that you have to do it behind a glass, and you have to do it separated by a barrier. What does that take away, and why is that in place? How does that make the person feel when those type of measures are put into place for something as simple as a visit? When the first visit was over, Aaron Wallace's wife was in a real precarious situation once she took their daughter there to visit him. And the daughter started asking a lot of questions. And was it just me, or did any of you also feel for her in that moment? That she was challenged and she was pressed with how do I best guide my child through this situation and answer these questions and help her to understand how and why it's taken so long, and how and why her father's not coming home. And mom, but you said this, but this is happening. And at that time, this child was only 7, 8 years old. Such a hard reality. That is the reality of many families that have loved ones in prison and in jails. Couple of weeks ago, or about a month or so ago, I moderated a discussion in the community about the impact of incarceration on family. And I think this series does a great job of continuing to paint a picture and really evoke the reality of family impact from incarceration. Such a hard scene to view and to watch. Going back into the visiting room, and how in order to enter the visitation room, that there's a screening process. There's the metal detectors and the searching and the lines and all of these security measures in order to just have connection. Connection is such a imperative and critical component to a healthy life. And the desire of the individuals in prisons and jails, the desire of the family member who is coming, the desire is for connection, that they would feel alive. And in order to achieve that connection, here are the measures that you have to go through in order to connect with your loved one. Metal detector, search, seizure, questions. And when I saw that, what came to my mind and what was clear to me is that our criminal justice system has an inherent no trust for the inmates, for the individuals who are incarcerated. It is inherent that they cannot be trusted. And because they can't be trusted, we must implement all of these security measures because they can't be trusted. We've got to search, we've got to seize, we've got to separate people, we've got to put up these glasses because they cannot be trusted. It's inherent. It's apparent because of all of the measures that are in place. But did you know, and do you know, they do that because they want to prevent what is called contraband coming into the facility, drugs or other type of materials or things that are just prohibited in nature, contraband. And although the criminal justice system has an inherent mistrust of inmates, did you know that more contraband is actually brought into the prisons and jails by the correctional officers than the inmates and their families? There is more contraband brought into these secure facilities by the correctional officers, more so than the inmates and their families. So who is the real issue here? Where's the greater issue? Is the greater issue really to have enough objectivity to realize that everybody's human being and no one is beyond reproach, and that in some way or another anyone and everyone has this battle and struggle with integrity and ethics and making the right decision in the right time at the right place and the right conditions, all of a sudden, because you work for the system, you're beyond immoral behavior, unethical behavior. It's not true. And our the accountability within our system for individuals that work in the system is not sufficient. All these measures are in place to provide security and safety, with the inherent trust that the inmates and their families are the ones that are up to no good and going to bring contraband in, when the reality is more contraband is brought into our prisons and jails by the correctional officers than inmates and families. That is a call to accountability, and that's something we can talk about and that we should continue to talk about, and what are the practices in place to really focus in on where the issue really is at, which is with all of us, not just them. It's with all of us, not just them. There was actually, at the beginning of the episode, so I actually found myself starting on my page 2, then my page 1. So I'm going to jump to the top of the episode really quick, and I really wanted to say something about when this episode actually started off really good, because it went back in time. And it went back to a place of memory. And one of the first things that Aaron Wallace's wife said, and pardon me for not remember her name right now, I'll nail it for next time, is she said, "I felt safe and secure." Those are buzzwords. Those are key words: safety and security. Now, I really wanted to press on safety and security because I do education on what it is to be trauma informed, and the biggest tenet in trauma informed practices and care is providing safety and providing security. And so there was a time in her life where that's exactly what she felt, and she was in a place where things were healthy. There was harmony in her life, and there was joy in her life, and there was security and promise and all these different things, and the hope was there. And the hard thing about being in prison and jail, or having a loved one who's in prison and jail, is really all you have are these memories to hold on to. Because like your present day, like your daily interaction, like what you're doing that day, that's not something you really want to meditate on. That's not something that you feel good about. You don't feel good being confined and contained to a cage. You don't feel good being separated from your loved ones. So all of a sudden, all you really have to hold on to for joy are your memories. But when you contrast the joy of your memories to the chaos of your present, then you have this agony. You have this real battle between what was and what is, and it really is torturous. And it reminded me of my own time while I was away, being held accountable for a choice that I made that was very illegal, that ended me up in federal incarceration. And I know those sleepless nights. I know those nights where you get the flashbacks of people telling you what was right and you didn't do it anyway, or the times where things were all good and now things are falling apart. And that's exactly what things end up doing. In this episode, you can see really how this unfolded for this family because of incarceration, that it is very common that the more time you're in there, the less likely that your family's going to stay together or stick together. And there's ripple effects and there's consequences from that division, from that separation. It was so sad and it was so hard to watch how the system contributed to the separation, to the division, and then ultimately the breaking of a healthy family. Healthy family, innocent man. And the system, our criminal justice system, operating as it's designed to do, separated that family, beginning to divide that family, and then ultimately broke that family. And that's not okay. That's not okay. That is disturbing. It's very dissatisfying. I want to say it's unacceptable, but here we are accepting it. Not speaking out, not standing up, not having conversations with people we know that can make a difference or make a change in this. We need to rally and speak up about the impact of incarceration on families. It was so hard watching Aaron Wallace go through the court system as an innocent man and deal with the litigation and the weighing out of whether to take a plea deal as an innocent man or go to trial or plead guilty as an innocent man or risk it and chance it. And that lawyer looked him right in the face and said, I'm going to tell you the truth. And here's the truth about our criminal justice system. He said, I have won cases with people who were dead guilty and have lost cases with people who were certainly innocent. I have won cases with people who were dead guilty, and I have lost cases to people who were certainly innocent. That's our reality. That's the reality of our system. That is so disturbing. That is so hard to hear. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. So then watching the actual court proceedings, and then this prosecutor is up there doing his job. And this is, I got disturbed by this too, because now all of a sudden it's more important that the prosecution wins versus actually accomplishing what would be called justice being served. Nothing but complete manipulation happening up there. You know, the twisting of information and the turning. And oh my goodness, I mean, I'm so fired up about this. This stuff hit too close to home. All of a sudden, you're involved in a conspiracy. You got friends who flip on you because they're being threatened with time. They're being threatened with things, and they go on a stand and lie. All of a sudden, you got liars getting lesser charges just because they flip and become witnesses for the prosecution. This is a very dangerous thing. This is a very dangerous thing. I don't want to get too far in the alleys with what I know about how that works, but when you start flipping on people and you start working for the prosecution and you start lying on the stand because you're afraid to do your time, that becomes very dangerous. There are people who lose their lives for what is called snitching. And I'm not advocating for, staying silent. I'm not advocating for taking the stand. All I'm saying is be honest. Be honest. If you've participated in something that's illegal and you got caught, own up to your part in it and do your time. It's not okay to be pointing the finger at other people just so you can reduce your amount of time. That is there is no integrity in that. That is not respected on any side of the situation, except for with prosecutors who want to send people to jail. And why though? Why do they want to send people to jail? And I'm all fired up. This hits too close to home. I've seen this happen too many times. And I'm very frustrated with how broken the system is, and that someone can be dead innocent, have a completely harmonious family, be trying to run a legitimate business, and then try to give somebody an opportunity to get on their feet, and all of a sudden that comes back and bites him in the tail, and now he's on the stand being painted to be a kingpin when he wasn't. But it doesn't matter. Because in the criminal justice system, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. One of the other things he said is, you got to consider taking this deal because the circumstances evidence covers the burden of proof. This is another one of the criminal justice terminologies. And so this is why this series is doing such a great job, because it's providing education. I have my bachelor's degree in criminal justice, but I'm sure some people are just watching and they didn't really go through all of this, and you're learning something. But burden of proof is a big part of the criminal justice system. And so he says the circumstantial evidence covers the burden of proof. And that's tough because it's not what you know, it's what you can prove in the criminal justice system. Sad, but true. So I've talked a little bit about how friends flip already and how that's very dangerous and how there's no integrity in that, and that if you do something ill, if you do a crime and you get caught, own up to your piece of it. Don't be bringing other people down with you. There's no respect in that. There's no integrity in that. The stressful conditions from court cases, from charges, causes division in family, tension in family. And then I talked about how it ultimately can crush your family. They said your parents is working 2 jobs trying to cover your legal fees. All of a sudden, there's all these ripple effects, all these other parts that goes into what it is to be entangled in the criminal justice system that people don't consider or think about. There's legal costs. And when you're incarcerating people without the means to really cover these certain costs, that impact, that burden, that financial responsibility falls on the family. So hard. Incarceration is so hard on the family. Systematic consequences. When it was a lockdown, well, it's a lockdown, so no visitors today. A system is not a respecter of persons. And I'm not saying that it has to be, because systems are systems, but somehow the people within the systems, we can do better. We can act with more compassion. We can act with more empathy. We can engage people in a way that's not so dismissive and inconsiderate of the sacrifices that people are making trying to be good people for their people who are locked away. The CEO, the correctional officer, just walks right by and completely dismisses the sacrifice of that family to get there. No empathy, no consideration. We can do better within the system, treating people in a way that they're seen, that they're heard, and that they're felt. So hard to hear Aaron Wallace's father, I believe it was his father, it might have been his wife's father, but talked about the fact that you may have to move on someday. And it's so hard to hear that and to see that, to just think about how hard that is to come to that reality. I'm just so heartbroken tonight, because incarceration creates single parent homes. Whether you're incarcerating the mother or whether you're incarcerating the father, it creates single parent homes and it creates burdens. And I'm not excusing criminal behavior. I coach men and women in reentry. That's my profession. That's part of the work that I do with the Hurdle Life Coach. This is part of the work I do with the Hurdle Life Coach as an educator. I also consult and help design and help organizations create systems of care, trauma-informed care that we can support individuals in reentry, survivors of trauma in childhood, addiction. And when I'm coaching them, when I'm coaching people, and I'm talking system, I never excuse personal accountability and responsibility to choices. But as an informed individual, there's more to the choice than just that moment in time. There's a lot of contributing factors to that. But I don't want to make it seem as if I'm excusing personal accountability, because I'm not. But we can, within the system, treat people with more empathy and more compassion. I'm going to close with this. I'm going to wrap up. I think I'm coming up on my time. I get caught up. One of the things she said was, sometimes it feels like yesterday. Sometimes he feels familiar, and sometimes he feels like a stranger. It's just heartbreaking it was hard to watch today. It was really hard to watch. This really hits home. Cousins, brothers, friends, myself. I know exactly what it feels like to experience this. So this one was hard for me to watch. and it's certainly just going to get better and more intense. I really appreciate, my friends that are hanging in with me here now as I'm walking through this. I really appreciate your guys' support in this. I think I'm finally getting the hang of this. I can kind of see some of the people that are hanging out with me. So I really appreciate you guys being here. Steve, Ian, Sabrina, Valerie. I pretty appreciate you all. Today's episode went through like 8 years. It covered it real quick. That's one of the things that I struggle with TV is that, they'll make time fly by like that when it ain't that easy. 8 years don't fly by like that. That's 8 holidays. That's 8 Christmases. That's 8 birthdays. That's a lot that happens within those times. There's a lot of pain and agony. So don't let the movie magic cause you to disconnect from the feeling of separation and the pain that's really going through all that time. But through those 8 years, man, that poor daughter just wanted her dad to come home. The mom had to go back to school and try to figure out the way to make ends meet. And, he had a good friend that was by his family side all that time. And he was a good friend. He didn't try to cross the line or anything like that. But it's actually, I learned this while I was away myself, that it takes about 6 or 7 years. If you get sentenced to more than 6 and 7 years, the likelihood that your marriage is going to stay together is very slim to none. And so that's actually a hard just reality, a hard truth that happens. Luck, it's fortunate if you only get a couple of years, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, you might be able to keep your family together. But when our criminal justice system sends people away to prison and jail for longer than that, we just need to start being mindful and really understanding the reality of that impact. And the fact is that you're going to shatter a family. And we can do alternatives to incarceration. We can still consequence people without sending them away for 10 years away from their children. Now, all of a sudden, all you had to do, you get to watch your child grow up in pictures. They're human beings. They made poor choices, but they're not dogs. They're not animals. And we treat them like dogs and animals. And we got to do better. And we got to do better in the courts. We got to do better in the prisons. And I'm really actually getting fired up about a concept. I'm going to start talking about community justice. We got to do better in the community as well. These episodes show a lot of more about the courts and what's going on in the prisons, but my biggest heart is what's going on in community. And so I'm actually looking forward to opening up some more conversations around that. I'm going to be doing some things here locally in Sioux Falls, creating a Hurdle Life community for the directly justice impacted monthly events. I'm going to educate. I'm going to encourage. I'm going to share. I'm submitting requests for proposals for conferences this year that I'm looking to share information at. That I can just, through Hurdle Life, lead a transformative effort for criminal justice so that we can treat people like people. Just because you do a crime or you make a poor choice don't make you any less of a person. And I think we're just missing that piece within our system in some ways. Not in every way, but in some ways. So with that, I know I got fired up. I can't tell you everything that I said, but I don't take any of it back. I mean it. I am committed to doing this work. I've lived it. I've survived it. And now I'm helping other people who have gone through it find their way to reintegrate back into family, into community, into life, into workforce. And I know that this means enough, so much to me, that this is what I'll be doing for the rest of my life. So I just appreciate everybody who's rocking with me. Next week, we're going to do it again. I strive to get better and better each week. Maybe we can start having some conversations. If you want to send me questions throughout the week, if you got any ideas, you can send them my way. If you got people that you think that I could benefit from or that can benefit from engaging with me, if you know someone who's struggling with addiction, with reentry, with life, I'm here to help and support people. I'll do what I can. If I can't help them, I'm going to point them in the right direction. And also just looking to engage in community in ways where I can share my story to inspire people to believe in themselves. So if you have any leads on that, please, I'm open to those things as well. But that's just me saying what we're doing with Hurdle Life. Appreciate people for being here with me. I really do feel you guys and appreciate you guys and respect you guys for being here with me. We'll do it again next Tuesday, y'all. Hurdle Life, have compassion, have empathy, have love. People are people. Thanks, y'all.